volcanic rock. Oh, there's a nice view down the river. So here I am at the US-Mexican border getting ready to start my 500-mile trek across the Mojave Desert. And so wish me luck. I might need it. Just got a text from the reporter.
I'm Adam. Yeah, obviously good coming to cheer him on.
Yep.
As he starts his journey. All right, we're gonna get going here.
Yep.
All right, let's do. You good for a quick interview?
Yep.
All right, sweet.
I'm Nick Van Buer. I'm planning to hike 500 miles across the Mojave Desert. Let me explain why. I've always daydreamed about doing some sort of long distance hike, but I'm not really excited about the big crowds that hike trails like the Pacific Crest Trail or the Appalachian Trail. For all the supposed wilderness of the Pacific Crest Trail, for example, only about 10% of the Southern California part is actually in designated wilderness. But let me back up. My real job is I'm a professor of geology at Cal Poly Pomona. I teach classes about rocks and minerals and the history of the Earth. And my students and I do research about exactly what that geologic history is, mostly in the Mojave Desert.
What is the total stats of the trip? Miles? How long do you expect it to take you?
Yeah, so it should take 5 weeks, 510 miles, something like 22 kilometers of elevation gain over the course of the trip. It's like 2.5 Everest courses of elevation gain. I'm swimming the Colorado River twice. Actually, that'll be on Wednesday. Just because I'm trying to stay within the wilderness area as much as possible, and to do that I actually have to swim the Arizona side and back. It seems to me that the most wild remaining part of Southern California is actually in the Mojave Desert, and that in fact it seems like it would be possible to cross from Mexico to the Sierra Nevada spending only about 10% of the route outside the wilderness. Here I am getting just started going here. So for several years now, this idea has laid dormant in my brain. Then I watched Tom Davies, GeoWizard, walk across Wales in a straight line.
Okay, I hope this wire takes me. This thin wire.
And so I decided that I too should film my journey. And around that time I was eligible for a sabbatical, which is sort of a paid leave you can get every 7 years or so to go do something different and creative. This is one of the big perks of being a professor. So I proposed to hike across the Mojave Desert while filming an educational YouTube series. Okay, so this first part I just have to walk up the road here, about 3 miles. Then once we get across Highway 8, then I'll be able to branch out a little bit, head out into the wilderness. Sun's rising up here. There's the border wall. Light coming through it. Before we get started, a note on foul language. I generally try not to curse in the classroom, so I was originally planning to edit out any profanity from the series, and in many cases I have done so, but I made an editorial decision to retain swear words where needed to convey an appropriate sense of desperation, so this series may not be appropriate for younger children. This canal here is the Alamo Canal. This canal actually is the precursor to the All-American Canal, dug back in around the turn of the last century. And this canal actually had an accident during a major flood back in 1906 and overflowed massive quantities of water flooding out of the Colorado River to create the Salton Sea. Whew. Look at that churning water. I better watch the traffic too though. Apparently the most deadly body of water in the US. So here, finally back where I started this morning at the Quechan Casino and Resort. Pretty nice hotel. Slightly sketchy freeway crossing, no designated pedestrian lane, but it's a lot better than trying to illegally cross the freeway. That mountain place is far too close for what I'm going tonight. I'm going to that farther mountain range, I'm pretty sure, is the part of the Chocolate Mountains I'm heading to tonight. These are also, I think, technically part of the Chocolate Mountains, but or no, maybe those are Cargo Muchacho Mountains. So all this land out here belongs to the Quechan people. Okay, so I think this is where I need to cross under the railroad tracks. Incidentally, this railroad line is the second transcontinental railroad line, which was completed in 1881 by the Southern Pacific Company. Although this segment was actually completed 4 years earlier in 1877. I think the last stretch was a little bit further along. But of course, before they finished this railroad track here, all journeys across the Mojave Desert would have basically been on foot. So, you know, although I like to think that not a lot of people have crossed the Mojave Desert in quite the way I'm doing right now, from south to north and trying to stay in the wilderness the whole way, you know, really everyone who crossed the desert used to cross it on foot until about 140 years ago when they put in this rail line. You know, some of the first expeditions out here would have been that were even on horseback would have been first Francisco Garces came out here in 1771 and scouted a route near here, which was then later followed all the way across the desert by De Anza in 1774. So before then, it really would have been just on foot, even without pack animals. Well, it's a relief to be off the crowded highway. Alright, so let me just get you guys oriented. So the city of Yuma is over there with the smoke on the horizon. The fields here are part of the Quechan Reservation. The canal here is the All-American Canal, constructed in the 1930s. And from here you can really get a sense of the massive scale of this canal. You see this freeway back there with cars for scale. There's these massive, that hill there and the hill I'm standing on are both massive piles of dirt, you know, were lifted up when excavating the canal here. And you can see that they tower above the surrounding landscape. And this is the largest capacity irrigation canal in the world. The capacity is something like 400 cubic meters per second, something like that. And it's 82 miles long. And now the earthworks aren't quite as impressive for the entire 82 miles, but it's still a big deal. It's also a big deal because it's a very dangerous body of water. It's swift moving. You can see down there in the reflection that the water moves. That doesn't look fast from here because it's far away and it's actually a lot wider than it looks. You know, those are giant reed Arundodonax. Those things are often grow to be well, they can grow to be as much as 10 meters tall. I don't think those ones look quite that high, but it's I don't know, it's a good 40 meters across that canal, I think. There have been over 500 drownings in the All-American Canal, and partly of that is because as the canal flows this way, it parallels the US-Mexican border, and unfortunately a lot of migrants who may or may not even know how to swim try and cross it, and it would be a pretty challenging and dangerous river to cross if you did know how to swim, and it's a death sentence if you don't. Not only at this site near Yuma do we have the second transcontinental railroad, which you can see down there crossing the river, that's where we were earlier. But we also have the first overland mail carrying route, the Butterfield stage route. In some ways, one of the earliest roads that went transcontinentally across the United States. And so there's a little structure down there, which was actually one of the stations along the stage route, Eraz Station. And so the stage route would have come across, basically paralleling the Interstate 8, and then it would have come across, obviously the canal wasn't here at that time, because the canal wasn't built until the 30s, and then it would have headed up this canyon over here. From the satellite image, I thought I could see one or two spots where I could maybe see faint remnants of old wagon ruts in the hillsides, but I don't think you can really see any of that from here. And then the route would have then continued to the left side of those mountains. All the way to Los Angeles, basically. Okay, well, I just need to keep going along the canal. Again, eventually I'm heading into those mountains, the Chocolate Mountains, off on the horizon. So still a long way to go today. Or I really just have to get to the edge of the mountains today, but that's the goal. I'm planning to cross the canal on that flume up there. The problem with this side of the canal is that because it's cut into these hills, it goes up and down these big embankments, and it's got a lot of extra altitude that I'd rather not have to deal with, so I'm going to try and cross the other side. I'm hoping, I think that flume there is actually so that water that's running down this wash can get across the canal without contaminating it with lots of gravel piling up there. So we'll see if it's possible to cross through that flume on foot. So I think my route passes through these thistly things. Hopefully these spiky balls aren't as stabby as they look. I'm just gonna go over here, try and see if I can find a route that's got fewer of these stabby plants I need to walk through. Well, we're just gonna go for it. That doesn't look too bad. Ow. Can't even tell you're on the bridge though, because the walls are taller than a man. Okay, now here's the tricky part. Let's see. Whew. Probably could slide down that. Let me think about this one a moment. I don't know, I think I'm gonna check it out. This one doesn't look too bad. I think I could slide down. It's definitely steeper than a normal children's slide, but I think I could probably manage to slide down without injuring myself. But the second one looks like it's a lot taller, first of all. Second of all, I have no idea what's at the bottom of it. Like, it could be a pool of water, it could be cactus. It looks too slippery. I'm not sure I could climb back up that. So I'm just gonna stay on my side of the canal. Actually, I wonder if I could go across on the... That'd probably be really dangerous. Let me look at it. Because I realized in principle I might be able to walk across the edge of the wall on the side of the flume rather than walking through the middle. On the face of it, that sounds like that'd probably be more dangerous. Because it's probably a narrow wall, and if I fall into the canal. But let's just check it out. Depending on how wide the wall is. Yeah, see, look how tall those reeds are. Yeah, this is more than a foot wide, see? That's like a good 20 inches wide. I'm gonna have to fight through these reeds later when I swim the Colorado River. I'll just take it nice and easy. Normally I wouldn't be slow or inconfident at all on something this wide, but don't see any trucks. Okay, almost to the other side. Yeah, I would never worry at all about crossing something like this wide normally, but it is kind of high. Okay. Safely on the other side. Waist overshoot. And my walk back should be a lot easier because that'll be on the road. I will say that did get my heart rate up a little bit. See, it doesn't look bad at all from here. So at about a little less than a mile, I'm going to cross a bridge and then head out into the wilderness. I was planning to refill there originally, but one of my concerns has always been getting down to the river to refill my water, because you know, this canal, as you can see, mostly has these reeds along it and has steep banks, and there are not a lot of places to safely get down to the edge. And I just saw this nice little ramp here, and I'm within a mile of it. I was going to refill anyway, so I'll have to carry my water an extra, kilometer or so, but I think it's worth relatively safe and easy water access. So I think I have 1.5 liters left. I want to leave her with 13 liters, so I need to pump for 11.5 liters. Hello. Yep, nice having a bridge. Not have to climb over anything dangerous or sketchy. Also, I think I'm probably glad I got water where I did. Didn't look very promising on this river anywhere. But this is where I basically leave civilization. Well, I was going to cut off the road, but actually there seems to be a road going about in the right direction here. Maybe I'll stick with this road for now. Yeah, so I still have another mile or so, mile or two of being on the Quechan reservation, and then I go on to BLM land for about a mile. Then finally get into the woods. I think I'm heading for that gap there, so it's almost straight in front of me. I'm a little worried that I'm a little behind on schedule here, especially because now I'm hitting the slow part. Feet are already tired, and this, unfortunately, this blue bag, although I'm sure it's great as a dry bag, it's not very good as a backpacking bag. And the good news is, right now is the most weight I have to carry, and I'm probably at about 60 pounds now is my guess. I think the time has finally come for us to leave the dirt road and head out, because that goes off that way. And the map looks like it zigzags that and then back. So I'm just gonna cut cross country now, down across this canyon, up the next, repeat. Unfortunately, this is this kind of, if you look at it closely, you'll see that it's flat on top, and then there's all these little canyons on it. So this is what we would call a dissected alluvial fan. This used to just be one big flat surface laid out by, you know, little desert washes, things like that. It would have been nice and flat and easy to walk across. But then at some point, this land got lifted up a little bit, or maybe the Colorado River cut down a little deeper. But either way, as this land surface got lifted up, this flat surface, then the streams would have cut down into it, making all these little canyons, which unfortunately are a real pain to climb in and out of, especially with a 60-pound pack. Ow. They actually have gloves, incidentally, but I haven't so far need to use my hands much, so they're in my pack. Sorry. Nothing like a field of basketball-sized boulders for the ankles. Okay, we've reached a milestone. We're finally into the wilderness. Now looking forward into the Chocolate Mountains, it's all part of the Little Picacho Wilderness. From here it's about 2 more miles to where I want to camp. I think it's still another hour and a half of sunlight, it looks like, so that should be not too bad. And so from here on, it's going to be like 90% wilderness areas. As again, you can tell by the fact the surface is super flat. This must be a, again, what we would call an alluvial fan, or the streams, you know, the current stream right now is down there. I say stream, I mean anytime it rains really hard, water will come down there. I saw some little bits of mud cracks that had little shoots of grass coming with them, so that probably last had a trickle of water in it in December. But unless you get a big thunderstorm and it gets more than a trickle, and it'll have a big, you know, deep layer of mud and stones that wash down and make a nice flat layer of mud and stones. And you see down there in the plain, there's a lot of sand mixed in with the boulders. You know, it's really mostly sand with some boulders. You come up here, we have something that has the flat surface on top that's sloping the same way as the stuff down there in active stream. But up here it's all just boulders, and it's uplifted maybe 100 feet, 30 meters above the current stream. So there's been some sort of mountain uplift since this plateau used to be down there with the stream, or the stream used to be up here with the plateau, depending on how you want to look at it. And all the sand has been blown away by the wind, just leaving the boulders behind. And another thing you'll notice is if you look down the stream, the current stream bed is light in color. It has light colored sand. And up here there are these super black colored rocks. And that's to do with something called desert varnish, whereby when rocks set out in the desert for a long time, thousands of years at least, they start to get a dark color on the outside, which is made, it turns out, primarily made of manganese oxides. Usually a little bit of iron oxides in there too. And people aren't exactly sure how it gets there, but most people think that it has a biological origin. That is, there's some sort of bacteria that lives on the surface of the rocks and scavenges manganese from somewhere, probably out of dust or something like that, to make these crusts. Well, and so my target is that ridge over there. So that ridge isn't just alluvium, that's actually bedrock, I think. And if the published geologic map is correct, it's basalt on almost all of it except for the very bottom. There's a little sliver of granite or something like that, which from here I'm not really seeing, but if it's got desert varnish on it, generally speaking, although basalt is a really dark color rock, so even before it gets desert varnish, it's pretty dark in color. A granite, a true granite, is pretty light in color, but they could have the same desert varnish process affect them and turn black just from a thin surface coating of these manganese oxides. So there's no real way of knowing if that's granite or lava or basalt until I get up there. You know, one of the reasons I'm interested in sampling the rocks here is because this area is mostly covered by these volcanic rocks on the surface that are very young. And if there are granites here, they're almost certainly Mesozoic in age. That's the time of the dinosaurs. About 65 to 250 million years ago. So they were probably from sometime in that period, which is much older. So if we're trying to find out more information about that time and what the volcanoes were doing, it's hard when most of the ground surface is covered by these volcanic rocks that are much younger, from just a few million years ago. So you have to seek out the handful of places where there are these older igneous rocks from the volcanism that came, 100 times or 10 to 100 times earlier. Okay, so it looks like we're finally coming up on outcrop here, or such as exists in badly weathered mountains like this. So far I don't see any evidence of a granite. None of these rocks on the ground look like granite, even without breaking them open. They still have all the little bubble holes in them. But sometimes it's helpful to get a little closer, just to make sure. You know, sometimes you have two kinds of rocks, one on top that makes big boulders and one on bottom that's very crumbly. You'll just get boulders with the rock on top, and it'll just cover over the rock that's crumbly. So it's probably worth, I should poke around a little bit, make sure there are no little bits of granite hiding out, and maybe even dig a little hole, look at the soil, make sure there are no minerals that look like the hematoggranite. But I would tentatively say that this looks like the old geologic map. Maybe just didn't map this correctly. Now I'm not going to cast any shade on them though, because those guys who did that map was done, I don't know, the 50s or 60s, and it covered 1 degree by 2 degree of latitude and longitude. So that's an area, 60 miles by 100 miles or something like that, or maybe a little more than that. So several thousand square miles. And when you're trying to map that kind of area, you can't look at every single hillside. I know, because I've done a little bit of mapping at that kind of scale, and you really have to, you can't comb over every inch when you're mapping several thousand square miles. But I always like to remind my students, just because it's shown on something that's published, sometimes it's shown, even if it's shown on like an official geologic map published by the U.S. Geological Survey, doesn't necessarily mean it's right. So it's always good to check data yourself. Don't assume that just because someone else said it, it's true. Don't see any traces of granite, even with closer inspection, so it's going to be back to heading up this canyon. Looks like we're probably going to lose our sun pretty soon once we get down into the canyon up here. Getting tired. Well, looks like the sun is finally set. Shouldn't be too much longer. It's less than a mile for sure now. But of course with these rocks, that's slow going. Okay, well, it's about a half mile shy of where I was originally planning. I think I'm gonna call this camp. It's starting to get dark. Tomorrow's hike isn't supposed to be super long anyway, so I'm sure adding an extra half mile to it's not gonna be a problem. It's got a little flat spot big enough to lie down on without rocks, and it's not even in the bottom of the stream bed, so it's flash flood safe. Not that there's any chance of rain in this clear sky, but only real thing is fuel for fire. But I could probably use some of those dead ocotillos down there. Hopefully dead ocotillos make a little bit of coals. Good morning. Welcome to the beginning of the second day here in the Chocolate Mountains. Still got my stuff packed up, but thought you might like to check out the sunrise. Well, it's still got some pretty colors in it. The moon back there too. Then once I get all this stuff packed up, then we'll head up the canyon. Just marching along, getting closer to the saddle up there. As I can see this little mini pass that I was originally planning to camp on the other side of, but just getting a little dark a little early. I think I spent too much time looking at my social media instead of walking quickly yesterday morning. But today's a short day, only like 13 miles or something like that. So, shouldn't be too bad to catch up. I think actually we've changed rocks. As we started out, we were in a basalt. And now we have this more pink colored rock you can see in the cliffs over there, and just some pieces here. It's pink, it's got little chunks of other rocks in it. So this is a tuff, which is volcanic rock formed explosively. Usually from eruptions of large, well, basically supervolcanoes that erupt magma that's rich in silicon, SiO2. Or I guess then it's silica, technically. And so these tuffs, I believe, are part of a rock formation called the Quechan volcanics, which are about 25 million years old. So we're going, I think if you were to look up in the canyon, you'd find that see up on that mountain, there's still a black basalt up on top, and then we're down lower are these pink tuffs and other volcanic rocks that are part of the Quechan volcanics, which again are quite a bit older. The basalt on top, I'm actually not sure those are well dated here, but similar looking rocks in nearby ranges are a few million years old. Looks like more of that Quechan Formation tuff. Basically, tuff is made of tiny bits of volcanic ash from a volcanic eruption that are all welded together. They're often welded immediately following the eruption because the ash lands and it's still so hot that it melts back together, basically. But that can only happen after a very particularly large eruption. So this is why I was saying earlier they're typically associated with supervolcanoes, or large caldera forming eruptions, we'd call them, if you want to be fancy, which I often do. Sorry, there's a lot of jargon in geology. I'll try to explain it when I remember to. We're just headed for the bottom of that slope there. I think it's sort of our pass, where we're sort of at the top of the range, on the sort of central plateau of the Chocolate Mountains. Okay, well, it looks like we've come to the high point of today's journey, at least. Actually, I think it's the highest elevation we get to until the fourth day. So at the very modest elevation of 940 feet above sea level, or about 280 meters, I guess. So that's the canyon we came up down there, and I guess Yuma would be off that way somewhere. And then looking east across the rest of the Chocolate Mountains, and off into mountains off in Arizona. Alright, I'm finally coming down to the main canyon I was dropping into here. I guess this becomes it. I'm turning left back north again, I guess I should say. I think I'm heading basically up this canyon, or down this canyon for a while now, until I eventually jump over to another one. These look like they're oh, hello. That's a okay, so there is a waterfall here. But presumably there's a way around because they're motorbike tracks. Trying to decide which side I should go on. I guess I'm already sort of on the left side, so we'll stick to the left side. Yeah, it doesn't look like it should be too hard to get around this. So there actually might be a lahar deposit, which is like a volcanic mud flow. These often happen, you know, when there's a big volcanic eruption, and then often the volcanic eruption will trigger a lot of rain, because basically ash seeds clouds, and then massive amount of rains on loose ash ends you getting one of these mud flows that's mostly ash, and then whatever volcanic rocks are picked up. So I'm actually, based on the fact that, you know, most of the chunks in here are this yellow stuff, which looks like it could be a volcanic tuff. I'm actually leaning towards thinking this is this might actually be a volcanic lahar that then would probably make this part of the Quechan Formation. See, this stuff looks more like a regular conglomerate or fanglomerate from a stream like this one. See, it's got different types of clasts in it, or different types of rocks in it. It's got dark rocks and light rocks. They're not all like yellowy ones, and there's a lot more sand in it. The other one had a lot of very fine-grained, sort of ashy looking matrix, or ashy stuff in between the bigger rocks. This almost reminds me of like the LA River or some of these concrete rivers in Los Angeles. I mean, the rock here is pretty similar to concrete, actually. I think it's another one of these lahar deposits. So it's volcanic ash and rock mixed together. It's got little chunks in it. The Romans used to put ash, volcanic ash, into their concrete. It actually helps react with the calcium-containing minerals in the concrete to form calcium silicates, which make the concrete stronger. It's called a pozzolanic reaction, after the name of the ash deposit the Romans used in Pozzolana near Rome. A colorful volcanic breccia of some sort, made of different color angular boulders of volcanic rock in an ashy matrix. The best guess for what would create something like this is probably a type of volcanic eruption called a dome collapse, where there's basically an extrusion of some sort of thick lava. In this case, it looks like this might be a dacite, which is a relatively silica-rich lava. It's got these rectangular crystals of mineral sanidine, which is a potassium feldspar. It's got some biotites in there, and so yeah, it's probably dacite, maybe a rhyolite, and the white chunks here are pumice, actually. So that definitely means that this happened during an explosive eruption. When you take maybe that actually push it towards, maybe it's a rhyolite. When you have a rhyolite that erupts, it has often a lot of gases in it, but the magma is too thick for the gas to escape. So it's sort of like, I mean, numerically it's a lot more viscous than peanut butter or tar, and basically this lava is so thick that you could build a house on it. And the house would catch on fire, but it wouldn't sink into the lava because it's that thick. And so the bubbles can't escape. And so when it erupts, there's still a huge amount of pressure of gas inside. So it actually pops like popcorn to form this frothy volcanic rock full of bubbles called pumice, which is what those little white blobs were back there. But those little white blobs were mixed in with fine-grained material or ash. Volcanic ash is just what happens when the volcanic rock just completely explode. So imagine popcorn that pops so violently that you're just left with little tiny bits of powder at the end. That's what volcanic ash is. So ash and pumice together imply that we have a very explosive eruption of the type that most commonly happens with with high silica magmas like rhyolite or dacite. And so the fact that it also had those big blocks of volcanic rock mixed in, that would form something called a block and ash flow tuff. And those are characteristic of a dome collapse, where you have a big dome of this very thick volcanic lava that doesn't really flow like a regular lava flow, you might think, but it sort of sticks up in the ground in a dome or spire. But eventually that big protrusion of lava eventually usually cracks and then falls apart. But when it falls apart, starts falling apart, that releases the pressure on the inside of the dome, which then allows it to start doing this sort of popcorn thing. So the outside of the dome probably was already cooled off a little bit, maybe already some of its gas escaped, and that just gets broken up into those big blocks that we saw there. Whereas the inside of the dome potentially could have a more violent eruption because it might still have more gas inside of it, and then make the popcorn-like pumice and the ash that then fills in the spaces between the blocks. So a pretty violent place to be 25 million years ago. This looks like a bit of a waterfall, but doesn't look too bad. I mean, if my legs were already stiff. Again, these are dead branches of the cat claw. They should be not so bad. Oh. That wasn't so bad. I mean, this kind of stuff is fun, but it's not efficient. Also, when the cane winds back and forth like this, it adds some mileage, which I doubt I appropriately took note of when. There's some water here. Well, I think I have plenty, so I'm not going to stop and pump any, but it's I'd say that's good tidings for good hope that there'll be water when I get to Tadpole Tank. I'm finding a random tank of water that doesn't even have a name. This doesn't look so great. I should have gone that way. I guess I still can. Ugh. Oof. So this musky colored rock looks like another tuff. You can see it's got little chunks of volcanic glass in it, and then it's got this yellow stuff. It's just an ashy matrix, or just basically ash that's all welded together. Over here might be better, where the sun isn't interfering. Hard to say. I don't think that's a real canyon. I'm gonna stay to the right. A maze of twisty little passages all alike. I think this time it's the left fork. Oh, another mostly dead cat claw. Well, dead ones aren't so bad because this thorn's mostly fallen off. Ow. I don't want to drag the bag against it too much. I probably should have just gone around with the slope above, but I'm going to have enough slope climbing up here, it looks like. Geez, you got me more than I initially realized. Okay, on second thought, I'm pretty sure it's actually supposed to be that one down there, so I must have taken a wrong turn in Albuquerque. Like I say, very easy to do in these little twisty canyons. They twist around, so, and usually their twists are too small to be shown on the map. Okay, well that was a figuratively and literally painful detour. But the good news is, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a very long detour. Only a few millimeters up the scale of the map. Despite this being one of my easier days, I'm already getting long shadows. So we'll see how I do tomorrow on my very long day, where I also have to swim the Colorado River twice. Okay, I think I just have to go down this canyon until I get to camp. Well, it sure does look pretty. It's getting darkish, but I think we're in the home stretch. My intended campsite is a specific location because right now we're in the Little Picacho Wilderness, and overnight camping is allowed here. But very soon we get to the border with the Imperial Refuge Wilderness, which goes along the Colorado River, and overnight camping is not allowed in the Imperial Refuge Wilderness. So basically I've chosen my campsite to be as far down this wash, as close to the point where I want to swim the river tomorrow morning as I can get. I seem to recall from looking at the satellite picture, it looked like there's a big waterfall right past where I wanted to camp. So if I get to a waterfall, I know I've just overshot by just a little bit. Of course, I need a dry waterfall. Of course, that means I need to navigate the dry waterfall first thing in the morning. Still dark, probably. But we'll worry about that when we get there. It always feels longer when you're in a dark canyon like this. Okay, so I think we've come to the waterfall. Okay, well, home sweet home. Well, it's about 5 a.m. and I've got all my stuff packed up here. About to get on the road. I gotta get down to the river. Got about a mile to go to get to the river. And I want to cross it basically as soon as it's light out, so I've got to get down there first. You know, basically the issue is I need to get down, I need to cross the river, hike 13 miles upstream, and then cross back across the river, so I can camp outside of the Imperial Refuge Wilderness, because there's no camping allowed in the Imperial Refuge Wilderness. So that's why I have to do a very long trek with 2 swims today. I gotta get an early start. Okay, well, it's now twilight. And I've gotten down to where this wash is starting to get choked with thorn bushes. So I think it's time for me to leave the wash and start doing the last extremely difficult half mile where I start my river swim. I think I'm a little bit actually further downstream than I wanted to start this climb out of the gully. But it was one of the things, again, it's hard in the wash to tell how far you've come. But there's a nice burrow trail here, so let's hope this one works. Of course, nice and burrow trail doesn't exactly mean it's going to be a walk in the park. But that looks like that's going to be the river down over there. So I think we're in the right place. We just need to get to the river. Ideally, get to the river at a good place to start swimming. Now there's the river, a little backwater here. It's making me feel cold just looking at that river. So yeah, the Colorado River is the third longest river in the continental United States. I think it's about 400 meters across here. Oh, there's a nice view down the river. Well, let's see if we can find a spot to get in the river without too many reeds bogging us down. Or thorn bushes, for that matter. Leaving the wilderness area about now is my guess. Oh, great. I don't even have to swim through reeds. Excellent. This is better than I was hoping from the satellite picture. I was afraid I was going to have to push my way through one of these reed patches. I probably have to do it on the way out. but somehow on the way out doesn't seem so bad. Okay, there's some mud there. It's okay. Just make sure it's high on my booties. Okay, well I gotta get changed up here, got all my stuff stowed away. Okay. It's now the moment of truth. Oh, this was really slippery here. Kind of cold, very muddy. This water's a little bit colder than where I was practicing. I think yeah, current is definitely moving here. There's the sun. I'm actually expecting to be swept down further downstream than the distance across, because this river is flowing faster than I can swim. But as long as I keep going perpendicular to the stream, I should make it. Okay, you can feel the current going faster here now. I don't know if I can feel it, but I can see the reeds going past sideways as I swim towards them. Okay, then I just need to get out through the reeds, which is I think going to be the hardest part. Let's get this on a shorter leash. Look for a waterfowl in there. Oh, the stuff along the edges. Oh, this is really muddy. Oh, this part's going to be a nightmare. I wonder how far I have to go before I get out of water. Okay, me next. Oh, fuck. I thought this might be the worst part. I originally thought I was going to do this on both sides. Yeah, this reed is called Arundo donax. And it's an invasive weed from the Mediterranean. I'm apparently strong enough to support the weight of my bag, but not me. I'll just untie this bag soon. Okay. I'm out of the water. Okay, I think it's on enough to stand on it. I can only kneel. If I stand, my feet go right through the reeds. I also hate to say it, I think it's time to get back in the river. Float down a little further. I think I didn't come down far enough. I think we're still where there's a big swamp inland. I was getting wishful thinking, getting too eager to get out of the river. Okay. Hopefully I didn't puncture a hole in that vomit. I could stand here, but it's so muddy. Okay. This is why I didn't untie myself yet. I was worried this might be the case. This is not bad though. It's easy walking. See, the rocks are much closer down there. Okay, I think this next cut in before this huge clump of donax. Okay. Hold on, bag. Seriously. Okay, it's getting muddy here in the shallows. Okay. Not sure this is any less treacherous. These waters by the shore. They're just full of slime. I almost wonder if it'd be better going into the taller reeds, but okay, here's a strategy. Roll the bag, knock down the reeds, and then slide over the reeds on the ground. Fuck me. Oh, you need to get up there. Hopefully there's a solid floor to stand on. It isn't just reeds all the way down. Well, it sure looks like it. Fuck. Look at that.
Having come so far, I can now see only an endless, impassable, pitch black abyss of icy swamp beneath the reeds.
Maybe this isn't possible.